Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our English speaking course. We're really happy to have you with us again.
Yes, and today's episode is going to be a little different from our previous lessons.
Instead of studying vocabulary from a list or learning grammar rules, we're going to learn English through a story.
But not just any story. Today's story is mysterious, emotional, and filled with advanced English vocabulary that you can learn naturally from context.
So while you're listening, pay attention to the words and expressions we use.
Don't worry if you don't understand every advanced word immediately. We'll explain the most important ones as the story develops.
And by the end of the episode, you'll have learned new vocabulary without feeling like you were studying from a textbook.
So, get comfortable, listen carefully, and let's begin our story.
It was a cold November evening when Daniel returned home from school.
Daniel was 16 years old and lived with his mother and younger sister in a small, peaceful town surrounded by hills.
Their house wasn't particularly large, but it had something unusual about it.
It had belonged to Daniel's grandfather.
His grandfather had been an intelligent but rather mysterious man who rarely spoke about his past.
Daniel had always been fascinated by him.
Unfortunately, his grandfather had passed away several years earlier, leaving behind hundreds of books, some old photographs, and a small wooden desk that nobody was allowed to touch.
Daniel had never understood why that desk was so important.
But that evening, something extraordinary happened.
When Daniel entered the house, he noticed an envelope lying on the floor near the front door.
At first, he assumed it had simply been delivered by mistake.
But when he picked it up, he immediately noticed something peculiar.
His name was written on the front.
Not his mother's name.
Not his sister's name.
His name.
Daniel stared at the envelope with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension.
That's strange,
he whispered. There was no return address.
The envelope was old and slightly yellowed, as though it had been sitting somewhere for years.
Daniel hesitated before opening it. He wasn't sure why, but he suddenly felt reluctant to discover what was inside.
The word reluctant means unwilling or hesitant to do something.
And that perfectly described Daniel at that moment. He wanted to open the letter, but something inside him told him to be careful. Eventually, curiosity overcame his hesitation.
He carefully opened the envelope.
Inside was a single piece of paper.
There were only a few sentences written on it.
Daniel read them once.
Then, again.
His expression changed completely.
"What?" he whispered.
The letter said,
"Daniel, if you are reading this, then I am no longer here. There is something I never told you. Go to the old house on the hill. Look beneath the third stone beside the oak tree. You will find what I was unable to explain."
Daniel stared at the letter in disbelief.
He immediately recognized the handwriting.
It belonged to his grandfather.
But there was one problem.
His grandfather had died 6 years earlier.
Daniel sat down slowly.
His mind was filled with questions.
Why had his grandfather written this letter?
Why had it been delivered now?
And what exactly was hidden beneath that stone?
The next morning, Daniel decided to investigate.
He didn't tell his mother about the letter.
He wasn't trying to deceive her.
He simply wanted to understand what was happening before raising unnecessary concerns.
The old house stood on a hill about 3 kilometers from the town.
Nobody lived there anymore.
According to local stories, Daniel's grandfather had spent several years there when he was young.
Daniel had visited the house once as a child, but he remembered very little about it.
As he walked toward the hill, the weather became increasingly gloomy.
Thick clouds covered the sky, and a cold wind swept across the fields.
Daniel began to feel apprehensive again.
Apprehensive means worried or nervous about something that might happen.
When Daniel finally reached the house, he stopped.
The building looked abandoned.
Its windows were dusty, the wooden door was damaged, and weeds had grown all around it.
Daniel pushed the door open.
It made a long, unpleasant sound.
Inside, everything was covered with dust.
There was an old fireplace, several broken chairs, and a bookshelf filled with books.
Daniel walked toward the back of the house.
Through one of the windows, he could see a large oak tree.
He remembered the instructions.
The third stone beside the oak tree.
Daniel went outside and began counting.
First stone,
Second stone.
third stone.
He knelt down.
The stone was heavier than he expected.
After several attempts, he managed to move it.
Beneath the stone was a small metal box.
Daniel's heart began beating faster.
He carefully lifted the box out of the ground.
It was covered in dirt and rust.
There was no lock.
Daniel opened it.
Inside were three things:
An old photograph
a small key.
and another letter.
Daniel picked up the photograph first,
It showed his grandfather standing beside two other young men.
but Daniel didn't recognize either of them.
He turned the photograph over.
On the back were three names:
His grandfather
a man named Thomas.
and another man named Edward.
Underneath the names was a date.
1978.
Daniel frowned.
He had never heard his grandfather mention Thomas or Edward.
Then he opened the second letter. The letter was much longer than the first.
Daniel began reading.
His grandfather explained that when he was young, he and his two closest friends had discovered something remarkable.
They had found an old underground room beneath the house.
The room contained documents, photographs, and several valuable objects that had belonged to a man who had lived in the area many years earlier.
But there was something even more mysterious.
Among the documents was evidence suggesting that the man had disappeared under unusual circumstances.
Daniel stopped reading.
Disappeared?
He continued.
His grandfather explained that he, Thomas, and Edward had decided to investigate.
But shortly afterward, Edward became frightened.
He insisted that they should forget everything they had discovered.
Thomas agreed.
Daniel's grandfather, however, remained determined.
Determined means strongly committed to doing something and unwilling to give up.
He believed the truth deserved to be discovered.
But before he could finish the investigation, something unexpected happened.
Edward disappeared.
Daniel's hands became cold.
He continued reading.
I spent years trying to understand what happened to Edward. Thomas refused to speak about it. Eventually, I realized that some secrets become more dangerous when they remain hidden.
Daniel looked around nervously.
He suddenly wondered whether someone else knew about the box. He quickly returned to the letter. The final paragraph contained a single instruction. Use the key. Daniel stared at the small key in his hand. But what did it open?
Daniel returned to the house.
He searched every room carefully.
He examined the doors, the cupboards, the fireplace, and even the floorboards.
Nothing.
Then he noticed something unusual.
One section of the bookshelf looked slightly different from the others.
Daniel moved the books aside.
Behind them was a small metal lock.
His hands trembled slightly as he inserted the key.
It fit perfectly.
Click!
The bookshelf moved.
Behind it was a narrow staircase leading downward.
Daniel stood there silently.
He had discovered the secret room his grandfather had described. He turned on his phone flashlight and slowly descended. The air became colder.
At the bottom was a small room.
There were shelves along the walls filled with old documents and boxes.
In the center of the room was a wooden table. On the table was a notebook.
Daniel opened it,
The first page contained his grandfather's handwriting.
but the final pages were written by someone else.
Daniel recognized the name immediately.
Edward.
He began reading.
Edward had written that he was afraid.
claimed that someone had been watching them.
He believed that the mysterious man who had disappeared decades earlier had not simply vanished.
Someone had forced him to leave.
Edward had discovered evidence of a much larger secret.
But before he could reveal it, he had been threatened.
Daniel's eyes widened.
Then he reached the final page.
Only one sentence was written there.
The truth is closer than you think.
Daniel looked around the room.
What does that mean?
Suddenly, he heard a noise upstairs.
Footsteps.
Someone was inside the house.
Daniel froze.
He quickly turned off his flashlight.
The footsteps became louder.
Someone walked across the floor above him.
Daniel remained completely silent.
After several seconds, everything became quiet again.
He waited.
Nothing happened.
Finally, Daniel carefully climbed the stairs.
The house was empty.
Whoever had entered was gone.
But something had changed.
The front door was wide open.
And the original letter from his grandfather was missing. Daniel immediately returned home.
He couldn't stop thinking about what had happened.
That evening, he decided to talk to his mother. He showed her the photograph and explained everything. His mother became unusually quiet. Daniel noticed her expression.
Mom, what is it?
She took the photograph from his hands.
She stared at it for several seconds.
Then she said something Daniel never expected.
I know this man.
Daniel looked confused.
Which one?
She pointed to Edward.
That's your grandfather's old friend.
Daniel felt a sudden sense of bewilderment.
Bewilderment means a state of being extremely confused or unable to understand something.
How do you know him?
His mother took a deep breath.
She explained that Edward had visited their family many years ago.
But she had been told never to discuss him.
Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing.
Why?
His mother hesitated.
Then she finally revealed something she had kept secret for years.
Edward had not disappeared.
He had left the town voluntarily.
But before leaving, he had given Daniel's mother a message. She had kept it hidden because she had promised Daniel's grandfather that she would never reveal it unless absolutely necessary. Daniel looked at her. What was the message? His mother slowly opened an old drawer.
Inside was another envelope.
She handed it to Daniel.
On the front were the words,
"For Daniel."
Daniel opened it.
Inside was a short message.
If you have found the room, then you are ready to learn the truth. The man your grandfather believed had disappeared was my father. He left because he discovered something that could have put his family in danger. Your grandfather spent years trying to understand what happened. He eventually discovered that the secret was not about money, treasure, or crime. It was about a decision that changed several families forever.
Daniel read the final sentence.
Sometimes the truth does not set us free immediately. Sometimes it first forces us to confront the past.
Daniel looked at his mother.
Neither of them spoke for several moments.
The mystery was still not completely solved.
But Daniel finally understood why his grandfather had kept so many secrets.
He hadn't wanted to frighten his family.
He had wanted to protect them.
And perhaps that was the greatest revelation of all.
And that's where our story ends.
But before we finish, let's look at some of the advanced words we encountered during the story.
The first word was peculiar.
Peculiar means strange, unusual, or different from what is expected.
For example, there was something peculiar about the old house.
Next was reluctant.
Reluctant means unwilling or hesitant to do something.
For example, she was reluctant to reveal the secret.
Then we had apprehensive, meaning worried or nervous about something that might happen.
We also used determined, which describes someone who's strongly committed to achieving something.
Another useful word was bewilderment, meaning extreme confusion.
And we used revelation, which means a surprising piece of information that becomes known.
We also had concealed, meaning hidden from view or deliberately kept secret.
For example, the documents were concealed beneath the floor.
Another excellent word is extraordinary, meaning very unusual or remarkable.
And finally, intriguing, meaning extremely interesting because something is mysterious or unusual.
So instead of saying the story was very interesting, you could say the story was intriguing.
And that's exactly what we want you to do with advanced vocabulary. Don't just memorize the definitions. Learn how the words behave inside real sentences. Listen to them. Read them.
And most importantly, use them.
What did you think of today's story?
I hope you enjoyed it because this is one of the best ways to improve your English without turning every lesson into a traditional vocabulary class.
When you learn English through stories, you encounter words in context, which makes them easier to understand and remember.
So here's a challenge for you.
Choose 5 advanced words from today's episode and create your own sentences with them.
Don't worry about making them perfect.
The goal is to start using the vocabulary actively.
And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like the video and share it with another English learner.
Also, subscribe to the channel so you can continue learning English with us in the upcoming episodes.
Keep listening
Keep speaking.
and keep challenging yourself with new English every day.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll see you in episode 17.
So